Friends, please feel free to share the tapes, pass them around to your friends, and share that information that you've learned. Before we leave, just a couple of tips, things that I've found hold true virtually every time I've installed a carbon tank. And that goes from the Typhoon to the I-beam Spitfire to Strega to Kent Heiser's Strega, just across the board. We always seem to wind up with a little smaller handle spacing, and that's something worth trying. In other words, once you move the CG back, and this moves it back quite a bit, taking an ounce, ounce and a half out of the nose is a relatively big change. You can try moving that handle spacing back, and even with less flap deflection, you'll wind up having pretty much the same corner or a better corner. When I say smaller prop diameter, the reason is because you're using less deflection. Less deflection is less drag. So a lot of times, and I say a lot of times, almost always, you can use, let's say you were using a 12-inch prop, you can use 11 3/4, or there's some smaller by a small amount, and you'll get the same drive out of the corner because you're using less deflection. The further back you move the CG, the less deflection you need. Every plane I've wound up moving the lead outs back, sneaking up, go back 1/8 of an inch or 1/16 of an inch at a time until you find that soft spot, that sweet spot where it turns real nice and stops. If it turns and hunts, you might want to try moving them a little bit further back. Or the biggest one that I found is that the total weight of the whole airplane, let's say it was 60, it'll be 58.5. If it's 68, it'll be 66. The total weight of the plane, you don't think an ounce is a lot until you experience it. It is a lot. And especially when it's dead weight, weight that's unnecessary, weight that's going along from the ride. And what happens typically, if you have enough time, or if you can get somebody like Paul Walker, Billy Werwich, somebody to fine-tune these things for you, you'll find out that it's a tool you can use. By combining all of these trim features, you can retrim your whole plane in a way that it'll probably, almost guaranteed, be more competitive, fly cleaner, fly better. Being lighter is always an advantage. Several people, including Paul Walker, testing and trying to maximize the performance on 4-strokes. This is where it really shines, because the extra ounce or two weight that the engines are, when you can get rid of that weight basically at the same place in the tank, a lot of times what you can wind up with is a plane that's no heavier than its 2-stroke counterpart, and yet it has all the benefits, the quiet sound, the real good flat torque curve of a 4-stroke. And I suspect in Europe that's where that's really going to pay dividends. But time will tell. It's an ongoing development. It's something we enjoy doing. We've enjoyed working with the 4-strokes. They are very pleasant to work with. And I think the carbon tank and a 4-stroke combination is just one that's really, really good. I had the experience of watching every single finals at this year's team trials, and I noticed almost to a man, or I should really say most, not everyone, they shim the tank for a little bit faster outside than inside. The brake here would be harder than maybe the brake here. I think the reason for that is most people enjoy having it brake better on the hourglass and on the vertical parts above 45 degrees. But again, when you have a tank, any tank, carbon or metal, you have this variety of shim choices. And again, you want to only support the tank on those ends. You don't want to just shove a big sponge in or something that's going to crush the middle of the tank. But this seems to be like the vogue thing to do, is run the engine a little bit faster inverted. If you do lap times, you'll probably say they aren't a lot different, but you'll see the engines braking a lot harder, especially in the outside part of the round and square 8, and especially at the top of the vertical and the hourglass. So that seems to be a vogue thing for setting up pipe motors. Obviously, we're making tanks for pipe motors, 60s 4-strokes. Less critical on a 4-stroke where you're not experiencing that hard 2/4 brake. It's a rather soft brake. almost an imperceptible break, but it's still breaking. The difference in the way you treat a metal tank when you're going to, say, store the plane over the winter or in a time you're not flying, you want to leave it full of fuel and capped. A carbon tank, you want to leave empty. I got to get the phone. It is one of the things you really want to be aware of, is that if you're not going to use the tank, empty it out, whether it's in a plane or if it's loose. Just leave it empty, and I would say put it in a plastic bag to keep dust from getting in it. Other than that, pretty bulletproof. If you have any little ideas or tricks or tips you'd like to share with people, once they go on the videotapes, I usually would include them in my columns for stunt news, pictures and or tips. Please feel free to submit them. If you haven't been out to the Brodak fly-in yet, take my word for it. It is a good time. And we were sad to lose Miss Ashley in the course of developing our carbon fiber tanks, but like the real plane, I guess it's in carbon fiber tank heaven now. Every time I think of how long ago and far away it was, way back in the mid-60s, flying a sweeper, and I wish at that point in time I could have looked into the future and seen just how much fun this hobby was going to be over my lifetime. I do consider myself to be very, very lucky to have participated in the event for all these years and made my little contribution back. And by saying this is going to be our next year's project, once we finish the carbon wing for Miss Ashley, we are going to try to make a B-25, possibly with 2 4-strokes, with Zetron throttle control. It's already been proven that that's a doable thing. And certainly I hope we can demonstrate it at the Nats and sneak it into the top 5. Anyway, thanks for joining us. Good friend Ken Tyser is also testing with us and giving me feedback pretty much on a daily basis how the tank is working out for him.